Om Tat Sat. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, to sage Narada and all other sages and saints, and to each of you divine soul watching today's satsang. Commentary is by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji Maharaj, and narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started. Narada Bhakti Sutras. So we had covered the sutra itself. I will repeat again, which is the same sutra we had talked yesterday or done the satsanga on yesterday. Sutra 35 is Tata tu Vishayatyagat Satsangyat cha. Again, tat tu Vishayatyagat Sangatyagat cha. So, in Yoga Vasishtha, which is a deep scripture, and other Vedantic works also, the emphasis is that we have to totally annihilate and efface the ego thought, because unless that ego thought is renounced, we cannot succeed in renouncing the objects, because the mind will go there again and again, the thought will go there. So a jnani, somebody who's on the intellectual path, a yogi, he renounces the ego thought by recognizing its illusoriness. He looks at the objects as transient. A devotee, however, brings about the cessation of ego thought by the practice of surrender to the divine self, promoted by increasing divine love. So he does sharanagati, complete surrender, while also doing his effort, but he understands that that's an act of divine grace. So by constantly thinking of objects, the mind becomes attached to them. As we know, it's a common principle. But so for example, if you suddenly start liking a luxury car, you have something, you are not happy with that, and then you see somebody's Lexus or something, and then now every time now your mind gets fixated on that, and now you want to find out the price. You go to the dealer, you check this, and can you afford it, how will you be able to get it, etc., etc. You can use your own brain for other things of the world, bigger homes, bigger things, and luxurious vacations. The list is endless. But as that comes, the mind constantly works more and more till you achieve that. You get attached to it. So you have to take that same attachment concept, but plug it into God. So by constantly thinking of myself, the divinity, the mind merges in me. Does that make sense? So if instead of the objects, if you make God your ultimate desire, and you are now constantly thinking of God, just like you think of worldly objects and you acquire them, you go within to acquire the most important thing, the nectar of divine love. And this is the essence from Srimad Bhagavad Puran. So in order to dissolve the ego thought, one must constantly think of God. That's why they say Nam Smaran, Ishwar Chintan, Japa, Kirtan. So the mystic formula that Swamiji says, Swami Jyotirmayanandaji, which I really like, it's called detach and attach. So that's the mystical formula for spiritual success. What does that mean? That an aspirant must repeatedly detach himself from the objects of the world and become increasingly attached to the divine self. Without detachment, higher flights of devotion cannot be experienced. So if our mind is worldly, we'll even only pray for worldly things from God, that may I get a son, may I get a job, may this happen, may that happen. We'll always be in the worldly plane. But as we climb the higher flights, we only want God, and we accept adversity and prosperity both as His blessing, as His grace. So there are two types of vairagya, which are called detachment or dispassion. Vairagya is dispassion, and without dispassion we cannot go higher on this path. According to Raja Yoga, there are two methods. One is called the Apara Vairagya, which is the lower Vairagya. It is covered in great detail in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and I have all those playlists there for you, for those who are listening to this for the first time. That is a very profound study by Sage Patanjali, and that is taking you more towards the path of meditation. But they are all blend into the same essential focal point, which is God realization. So and then the second stage is called Paraviragya, which is supreme dispassion. And so in this sutra we will cover the stages of Aparaviragya, or the lower dispassion, the lower stages. And they are called, the first one is called the Yatamanam. And those of you who are because these are technical terms, it may be helpful if you are serious to write these down, take notes, or read the book, which is or the scripture Narada Bhakti Sutras from Swami Jyotirmayananda ji, and then follow accordingly. But the and the website for those of you who want to order it is yrf.org. So Y for young, R for Randy, and F for Frank, yrf.org, and that will take you to Swamiji's website, and you'll find the bookstore, and there are tons of treasures for you to revel in. And there are many disciples who are feeling so connected by this small humble attempt of mine to connect to divine worshipful Guruji. So you can also enjoy the nectar and wisdom of his teachings. While I am personally not writing books and all, my goal is primarily to spread the teachings that my master has already done and bring it to the masses who don't have time perhaps maybe to read the books, or if you're driving you can listen to these things. So I'm trying to bring it in a slightly user friendly format for people of today's world who are busy and who may not have dedicated time to put it, and also to bring satsanga to you every single day. So this can be like our morning satsanga before we start our day. Therefore I try to keep it short as much as possible, but some sutras are so deep that they do require deeper introspection. So let's cover the four stages of Aparaviragya, or the lower stages. And that is, the first one is called the striving stage, which is spelled as Yatamanam, Yatamanam, Yatamanam. So in this stage, a devotee promotes Vairagya by thinking of the evils of the sense enjoyments. So you have to introspect, otherwise the mind will continue to mechanically go towards the pleasures, thinking it's giving you joy and happiness, but it's all flickering light, it's all temporary. The wealth and glory of the world are as repugnant as vomited stuff once the mind has tasted the joy of devotion. So once you start finding the nectar within yourself, all these things start becoming like transient, and your mind is no longer interested there. The second stage is called the differentiating stage, which is called Vyatirekam. These are Sanskrit terms, Vyatirekam, Vyatirekam, Vyatirekam. A devotee begins to detect changes that have occurred in his inner life. So he starts introspecting, he starts seeing himself 5 years ago and where he is today. After all his teachings, studies, resigning to God and the scriptures, how the subtle desires for objects have gradually waned, and how greater control over himself has come to exist. So he focuses on that. And the third one is called one sense stage. It is called Ekendriyam. Endriya means our senses, and Ekendriya means one pointed. So Ekendriyam, Ekendriyam. As Vairagya or dispassion grows, a devotee masters the senses. He must yet master the mind, the only sense that remains to be controlled. And mind is like the wind, it is not so easy to control because it is very turbulent. And so, therefore, we have to have a lot of patience. And the fourth one is called Vashikaram stage, or the controlled stage. Vashikaram, Vashikaram, which means at this stage the mind is fully controlled, and a devotee enjoys the increasing bliss of devotion. Why is it so intense there? Because the mind now fully cooperates. It's no longer pushing and pulling, it's giving you full cooperation. So therefore it is also enjoying bhakti with you. So, as devotion grows, an aspirant advances along these stages of aparavaragya. So, these are the four stages again: striving, which is yatamanam, differentiating, vyatirekam, ekendriya, one pointed, and vashikaram, controlled stage. So, it comes in stages, therefore, the need for regular practice, constant. As devotion grows, we advance in the apara vairagya, lower stages, until finally, by divine grace, and that happens through divine grace, because God also helps those who help themselves. He sees my devotee is working hard, so his grace falls upon us, and then the devotee renounces the mind stuff itself and attains the paravairagya state. So which means that is the state that we have been, Sage Narada is guiding us, and for all of us to try to strive for, because devotion by itself is not enough. We have to do much more than that and achieve that highest samadhi. If we want to achieve God realization, we have to go higher than that. So his experience of divine love is then complete, and his devotion blossoms into parabhakti. So just like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, a bud turns into a flower, similarly जो अपरा bhakti, the lower bhakti turns into para bhakti or supreme devotion. Therefore, we find that para vairagya or dispassion, which is ordinarily difficult to attain through the other yogas, becomes easy through the force of devotion, because then God's grace comes in. We seek, we humble down, we say, God, this is hard, we cannot do it by ourselves. We are trying and we will continue to try, but we also seek your mercy and grace. And when that happens, his grace falls upon us, and it's like a nectarine shower that cleanses our soul, cleanses our body, and makes us fit to attain liberation. So this is, we have covered this sutra number 35 in second part, and we will be covering sutra number 36 tomorrow. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.